Next category is intuition. I'm pretty sure that I've enough words in me about the subject of intuition to write another book. Intuition is really significant when knowing how to interpret signs, symbols, life events, but this book is not the place to delve into the subject any further than to recognise its role in coincidence. Intuition, what is it? It's that inner knowing, without the need for words, about something or someone in your world. We all have it, and some of us listen to it more than others. Intuition is the feeling of knowing when something is right for us, or when something is off. We don't always have a reason for our belief or knowing, but learning to trust your intuition is a really useful life skill that can keep you out of all sorts of trouble. If your intuition is telling you don't do it, or not with this person, not this job, not this home, listen to it, your own inner voice that will guide you onto the best path for you, if only you will. Telepathy. Thinking of someone who several minutes later contacts you by phone, messages, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, Snapchat, you name it, is a form of telepathy. The thought of someone passing through your mind moments before they contact you is a form of telepathy. As humans, we can heighten our own sensory perception, and some people are more intuitive than others, and some people develop their skill of heightened mental awareness more than others. But I think it is a skill everyone has access to. Some people see these skills as a psychic ability. They are able to draw on a level of mental consciousness at will. For the majority of people, it happens naturally. Some people even ignore it or dismiss it. But for lovers of coincidence, it is one of those areas where we can improve our own mental acuity to not only be able to recognise when it's happening, but perhaps even to voice it out loud, or even call the other person who is thinking of us first. Someone can think of us, intending to contact us, and we call them, only for them to say, I was just thinking of you, which we often dismiss, but in reality, we are picking up on their intention to call us. Premonition. Some feelings and thoughts bring us an awareness that some specific event will happen. Often this occurs around births, deaths, meeting significant others, and all manner of other huge live events. Sometimes this happens for us, but more often on behalf of other people. So premonition sometimes happens just before an event occurs, split second, minutes, hours, days. People have been known to have the same premonitions about people. A common premonition is around the subject of births and death, trauma to a family member which is similar to telepathy, feeling linked up to the other person. So when a major life event is due to happen to them, other family members are filled with unease, or sometimes a definite knowing that something has happened. It's the unexplainable. It isn't easy to explain premonition. Once you have recognised it once, it does become easier to recognise. Like Mark Twain, predicting his own death. The author of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn was born in 1835, on the same day as Halley's Comet appeared, and in 1909 Mark Twain predicted his own time of death. It is coming again next year, and I expect to go out with it. Mark Twain did indeed die of a heart attack the day after Halley's Comet nearest approach to Earth in 1910. One of the most interesting parts of life for me, dear reader, are the parts that we have no definite explanation for, the mysterious, the unknown, quite possibly unknowable. It often isn't easy even to recount the story, never mind explaining it, and this is the feeling that I'm trying to convey. Okay, story about premonition in a cinema story. Let me set the scene a little for my next story. Come back with me to 1989 roughly. It might have been late 1988, but it was so roughly around that time. A time with no internet, no Uber. The list of things that we have now that we didn't have then goes on and on. I mention these things as a reminder that the very act of more than a few people getting together in the same place at the same time took a lot more organisation than it does today. No WhatsApp group, I know. For you dear younger readers, it might be a stretch to even try and picture what that looked like. Well, it looked like either using the landline between houses, popping around to check what the arrangements were for the weekend. 1989 was a time of mixed fashion, big hair and aerobics for some, and scootering mods, punks, rave fashion for others. Before Facebook, if you wanted everyone to know everything about your life, I was living in a shared house with a couple of friends that I'd known at school. We had a busy. One of my flatmates was a hairdresser, and often there was a kitchen full of people waiting. It was during these social gatherings that the plans were made for the weekend. Our other flatmate had heard that there was going to be an all-night film fest at the local cinema, all-night showing of horror movies. As a group of energy-filled young people, whenever something was going on in Southend-on-Sea, desperate for entertainment and a need to socialise with people, a need which has now been satisfied with social media sharing and photo sharing, but that isn't enough. When you think about it, it was a miracle that we managed to organise ourselves to meet up. We would find ourselves in the same pub, waiting to go to the same party. This is the benefit of being part of a group. There is safety in numbers, and this particular night, after spending time together indoors at home, I think there were about 8 of us in our outing to the all-night horror fest at the cinema. The plan was to watch horror films all night, scaring ourselves half to death, and escape the chance to feel as though we had done something with our weekend. Now, I really dislike horror films. I dislike them then, and I dislike them now. Avoid them if I can. Charming. Don't mind a little bit of fear, a mystery, a psychological thriller, but I really can't. I'm not a fan. I'm not entirely sure why I agreed to go at all. I do remember that my flatmates wanted to go. One of them was having a goth. I'm raised. She rarely came out during daylight hours at the best of times, and the idea there was a social event happening all night. I think she started it by saying she wanted to go, and gradually we all caved and caught her desire. And before we knew it, we were piling into a surprisingly busy cinema. I think we made it through one film. We were halfway through the second film, and I was gripped with what I could only describe as a mixture of terror combined with what felt like an invisible force propelling me to act. This fear had nothing to do with what was happening on the screen. I reached for my flatmate who was sitting next to me, still glued to the giant screen in front of her. I grabbed her. She could see that I was deadly serious, and I wasn't messing about. I had a sense of urgency. I jumped out into the aisle without asking any questions. She followed right behind me. I raced up the stairs in the dark and burst out through a pair of double doors onto the cinema lobby. Kept going right through the exit doors leading to the street. I held the door open for my flatmate Lisa, who by this time was full of questions. What's going on? I didn't have any answers. I replied with things like, I don't know, I just had to get out. The door flew open behind her, and more people started coming out. Some of them coughing, and seconds after we left the cinema, someone had let off a tear gas canister or some sort of noxious substance that was causing people irritation and trouble breathing. All our friends eventually came out, also with smarting red eyes and coughing. They couldn't believe that. I just know that by acting on impulse, hunch, invisible force, saved us both from an unpleasant experience and left us both a little gobsmacked as to what had just happened. Years later, I now think that maybe I picked up the evil intentions of someone else coming from the other side of the cinema, and I was sensitive enough to it that it felt a strong reaction. This is the closest I could get to an explanation. Precognitive consciousness. Another difficult one to explain, so I'm handing this one. Precognitive consciousness refers to the ability or phenomenon of perceiving or having knowledge of future events or information before they occur. It implies a form of awareness or understanding that transcends normal temporal boundaries, allowing individuals to access information about future events that has not yet happened in their current timeline. The concept of precognitive consciousness is often associated with psychic abilities or extrasensory perception (ESP). It suggests that certain individuals may possess the capacity to tap into a high level of awareness, intuition, that enables them to gain insights into future occurrences. Wreck of the Titan story. The sinking of the Titanic, which means unsinkable, had some coincidences. A book written by Morgan Robertson in 1892 called The Wreck of the Titan. Robertson wrote a story about a fictional ocean liner, a massive and supposedly unsinkable ship which hit an iceberg starboard side, going at the same speed, the same number of passengers as the real sinking of the Titanic in 1912. Terence McKenna Oyster story. Terence McKenna tells a story of how he was in his well, in a complete state, smoking some sort of drug like marijuana. He was just thinking to himself, wouldn't it be nice to have some oysters, Rockefeller, or some Belgian chocolates and Russian caviar? And in the distance he saw a guy walking towards him. He sensed he had food. He had a rucksack on his back. The guy came into his tent and sat down with him, proceeding to empty his rucksack full of food. Not just any food. He had oysters, Rockefeller, Belgian chocolates and Russian caviar. He'd been working at a 4-star hotel as a dishwasher, and he had quit the job in disgust, but not before raiding the fridge and filling his backpack full of food. The coincidence was so delicious for McKenna he didn't even bother to tell the guy. He picked up this information from the universe just before the reality of the information reached him. Terence McKenna, by offering the flow of spirituality, feeling loving, feeling kind, offering harmonious vibes, feelings, thoughts and words, put him in the right frame of being to be able to commune with the universe about something in his vibrational vicinity, perhaps making him aware of what was about to come to him. And McKenna took this to be something he was thinking. Cat predicting death story. Animals have been known to have a precognitive awareness in their waking hours, often being aware that a person is near death, or when they are about to have a fit or a heart attack, or even if they're suffering from cancer, by identifying a smell peculiar to the urine of cancer sufferers. There was a nursing home which had a cat who predicted the next person who would be dying by sleeping on their bed. After the cat slept on their bed, in the next day or so, the person would usually have passed on. It happened often enough for the story to make a local TV news channel. Further reading, see Oscar, Therapy Cat. A good example of precognitive consciousness is really when a person has a sense of knowing, and for them the reality hasn't formed yet. It isn't quite concrete, and yet they know this event will occur. Dean Radin is one person who somehow managed to organise some mass consciousness experiments. Some experiments appear to show a change in people's awareness of huge events happening up to 2 hours before the event. For further reading, see gotpsi.org online games. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.